I need to improve this so that I can be a contributing member of my groups and communities. I have a problem. I need to be better because I need to do something better for my community. That is something that the Koreans are much more likely to say. And the good life is a life in which a people, a culture, and a government addresses these issues in ways that benefit the majority of people who are living in a particular country. Because how you address housing and education and disabilities and social wellness and inequality, the environment, all of these things impact on people's ability to live a good life. And we in the United States have a homelessness issue. Everywhere we turn, there's so much homelessness. In every major metropolitan area you go to in the United States, you can find food lines and food banks like this. Every major metropolitan area, millions upon millions of people. So I want to ask you a question first off. Tell me where you would see that in Korea. Tell me how long in Korea this person would lay on the sidewalk before somebody would do something. How long? Maybe not even a minute before somebody would do something. And here, in every major city in the United States, we can find people like this. So what about Korea and what about Seoul? Say, I talk to Koreans all the time, obviously, because I have many, many conversations and I talk about your culture. And Koreans, I will talk about poverty and homelessness. And Koreans will say, oh yeah, we have such a problem with crime. We have such a problem with homelessness. We have such a problem with poverty. We have too many poor people here. We don't know what to do. Homelessness is such a problem in Seoul. Koreans will say this. And I say, wait, hang on a minute. What do you mean it's a problem? How do you define a problem? What do you mean? Problem for who? Problem for you? Problem for somebody else? How do you define that? Because, see, problem is going to will be defined differently by each person. So what's a problem to one person is not a problem to another person. We in the United States evidently don't have a problem here. Because, see, our solution to these people, last week, the mayor of this city decided, well, what they're going to do is the police are going to go down this street. This is not one small area. This is a street that is a mile long. So imagine how many people, a mile long. And so their decision was, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're just going to force those people to move. And I say, where are they going to go? You haven't solved the problem. So what about Korea? What about you? Let me talk about protesting as an example. You are a nation of people who love to protest. You're in many ways, professional protesters. There's so many protests all the time here. I talk to Koreans and they say, oh yeah, we're protesting all the time. We're really angry. And I say, So I've been to protests here in Korea, not as a protester, but I pass by a protest, I see a protest happen, and the very first time I thought, wow, this is really interesting. What's going on here? And it took me a while to really remember, these are people protesting something. Because people were very orderly. They sat on the ground, they had signs, everybody was in a row, and the leader said something, and people held up the sign, and they brought it down, and they did a chant, and it was very, very organized. This was a protest in the U.S. because their sports team, they were protesting after a big game. Not because their team lost, but because their team won. They were protesting. Burning things, destroying buildings. That's a protest. They broke windows in stores. They burned some things. That's a protest. Let me show you this: dangerous, very dangerous, extremely dangerous. I don't see any yellow. I don't see any orange. I don't see any red. I just found this map, but I searched the city of Seoul to say, like, okay, what would be the parts where they would be any of these colors? There's nowhere. There are a couple streets, a couple alleyways, especially if you're a woman, a young woman, you want to be careful late at night, but there's nowhere. Earlier tonight, I left my bag sitting out in the courtyard when I went to eat. And I realized, I don't have my bag. And I thought, and then I thought I left it here, which was a problem because I'd have to walk all the way back here. But I said, well, let me go get my bag, knowing that wherever it was, my bag was still there. And if it wasn't there, it would have been because somebody had somehow given it to the police or something. And people often ask me, hey, why did you become interested in Korea? And I said, well, I first became interested in Korea 40 years ago. And I had an office mate from Korea. And I said, hey, tell me about the military government in Korea. And so we started talking about it. And then about 10 years ago, I just came back around to Korea. And after studying the rest of the world and traveling around the world and living in countries around the world, when I came back to Korea, to thinking about Korea, I started to see a lot of things that were happening here that really fascinated me, including the fact that Koreans are so critical of yourselves. Because you will say, even the small amount of crime, or even the small amount of homelessness, or even the small amount of poverty is too much for us, and we really should do something about it. Whereas I have been seeing so many cultures, including my own, but not just my own, where large amounts of these things somehow just become acceptable. That, well, that's just the way it is. And there's nothing we can do about it, and there is nothing we are going to do about it. And so I started asking the question, how did you do this? What kind of a people are you that have been able to build this world? And you have problems. You have problems here. Didn't have problems. Every society has problems. But your problems are so different. You know, your personal criticism, when I say directed toward others, it was really impossible for me to say what I want to say. But let me just give you a sense. This is what Koreans might say. I need to improve this so that I can be a contributing member of my groups and communities. I have a problem. I need to be better because I need to do something better for my community. That is something that the Koreans are much more likely to say. Koreans can only know who Koreans are, Korean culture, Korean society, by understanding other societies. Americans can only understand what America is and who we are by understanding other lands. That's how it is. The fish doesn't understand water. Human beings don't understand our own culture. So there's something that you've discovered about building a good society, and there are many, many different aspects and components to it. That I know. But it's really an honor and a privilege for me to look at some of those and hold a mirror up to this nation to say, hey, take a look at some of the things that I see that maybe you don't see. Because this is a really fascinating and a very cool place. 감사합니다. Thank you. Yeah.